I was leafing through the family Bible when I heard my future daughter-in-law call me vecchia stupida, old fool, in Italian, thinking I didn't understand. I smiled sweetly and offered her more iced tea. What Isabella Rossi didn't know was that I spent 5 years in Rome during my missionary youth, and that the ancient Bible on the table held notes that would completely destroy her plans. 3 hours later, when immigration knocked on the door on Christmas Eve, she discovered that underestimating a praying grandmother was the fatal mistake of her life. You won't believe what my mother-in-law had written in the margins of that Bible 50 years ago. Prophecies about protecting the family from wolves in sheep's clothing who would reveal themselves at exactly the right time. And what I discovered about Isabella didn't just save my son Benjamin from a fraudulent marriage. It exposed a criminal network that had destroyed 9 Christian families in the last 6 years. If you also believe that God places guardians in generations to protect those to come, subscribe to the channel to discover how sacred family objects carry protective anointings that transcend time. Press the bell, because this story of marriage scams and divine intervention has never been told before, and the twist at the end will restore your faith in the Lord's eternal purposes. Prepare your hearts, because together we'll discover how a 68-year-old grandmother in Maplewood, Tennessee, used a prophetic Bible and spiritual warfare to expose the biggest fraud our community has ever faced. My name is Dorothy Mae Patterson, but everyone calls me Dot. I'm 68 years old and live in Maplewood, Tennessee, one of those small rural towns where people still pray before meals in restaurants, where Wednesday services are as packed as Sunday services, and where families have known each other for so long they even know the secrets no one tells. I've been a widow for 3 years. My husband, James, died of pancreatic cancer after a courageous 8-month fight. He was a deacon at Maplewood First Baptist Church for 25 years, and when he left, he took with him pieces of my heart that have never been put back together. Since then, my greatest joy has been my son, Benjamin, Ben, as everyone calls him. At 38, he works as an engineer in Nashville, an hour away. He's a good, hard-working, God-fearing man. But he carries that quiet loneliness of men who lost their fathers too young and haven't yet found a family of their own. That's why I was so happy when, 6 months ago, Ben called me excitedly saying he'd met someone special. "Mom, she's unlike anyone I've ever met," he said, in that voice children use when they're in love for the first time. Elegant, cultured, kind, and best of all, she loves the Lord. She goes to Mass every week. Mass. The word should have alerted me from the start. Ben had attended Baptist church since he was a child, but love blinds us to the details that God places as warning signs. "Where is she from?" I asked, trying not to sound overly curious. "From Italy. Rome. She came to Vanderbilt for her master's degree in hotel management. Her English is perfect, but she has that accent that—" "Oh, Mom, just wait until you meet her." Italy. Rome. Master's degrees. It all sounded too sophisticated for my simple Maplewood Ben, who liked to fish at the lake and watch football on Sundays. But who was I to judge? I'd prayed that God would bring the right person for my son since he was born. Perhaps this Italian woman was the answer to my decades of intercession. Have you ever prayed so hard for something that when it seems to be coming, you almost don't believe it? It was a cold October night when Ben finally brought Isabella Rossi home. I had prepared my famous Southern dinner: fried chicken, creamy mashed potatoes, vegetables from my own garden, and peach cobbler that was still warm from the oven. When the door opened and she walked in, I confess my breath caught for a second. Isabella was exactly as Ben had described, and more. Petite, delicate, with that effortless European style. Perfectly wavy dark hair, expressive brown eyes, and a smile that lit up the room. She wore a simple but elegant dress and carried a bottle of Italian wine tied with a red bow. "Signora Patterson," she said, taking my hands in hers in a way that felt genuinely warm. "Ben mi ha parlato tanto di lei. Ben has told me so much about you. I'm so happy to finally meet the woman who raised such a wonderful man." Her accent was charming, musical, and she used the Italian title of respect before switching to English, a touch of cultural consideration that touched me. "Welcome to our home, dear," I replied, hugging her. "And please call me Dot. Signora Patterson makes me feel very formal." She laughed, a soft, genuine sound. "So you call me Bella. Isabella is too long, don't you think?" During dinner, Bella completely charmed us. She asked thoughtful questions about our family history, complimented my cooking with what seemed like genuine appreciation, and even helped clear the table uninvited, something none of Ben's previous girlfriends had done. "Your house has such a warm energy," she said, looking at the photos on the fireplace. "I can feel the love here. It's so different from the houses in Italy, where everything is old and formal. Here it feels, how do you say, cozy." Ben smiled throughout dinner, clearly smitten. And me? Well, I found myself thinking that maybe God had truly answered my prayers. Maybe this elegant young lady from Italy was exactly what Ben needed to finally build his own family. This feeling lasted exactly 47 minutes. After dinner, Ben excused himself to take an important work call. He went to his office on the second floor, leaving Bella and me alone in the living room while I made coffee. Her phone rang. She glanced at the screen, stood gracefully, and said, "Excuse me, Dot. It's my mama from Italy. I need to take this." "Sure, dear. Make yourself at home." She stepped out onto the back porch, and I went into the kitchen to make coffee in my old cloth strainer, the same one I've been using for 30 years. That's when I began to overhear her conversation. Contrary to what she thought, I wasn't in the kitchen. I was in the adjacent pantry, which has a small window that looks directly onto the balcony, and the Italian she spoke on the phone came through crystal clear. "Yes, Mom, everything is going according to plan." "Sim, mãe. Tudo está indo conforme o plano." My blood started to run cold, but I kept listening. "I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. O divórcio ainda mais fácil após 2 anos quando eu tiver a residência permanente. Então voltarei para Roma com cidadania americana e dinheiro suficiente para viver como quero." The coffee filter slipped from my hands and fell to the floor with a thud. Have you ever felt that exact moment when you realize the devil is in your house wearing a pretty dress and a charming smile? "Dot, is everything okay?" Bella's voice came from the kitchen doorway, concerned and sweet. I turned slowly, forcing a smile. "Just a little clumsy. These old hands aren't what they used to be." She rushed to help me, kneeling gracefully to pick up the pieces from the colander. "Please let me help. You shouldn't be cleaning up after preparing such a wonderful dinner." The irony was so thick I could taste it bitterly. This woman had just explained to her mother how she planned to manipulate and eventually steal my son. And now she was helping me clean up spilled coffee with the tenderness of a truly caring daughter-in-law. "Thank you, dear," I managed. "You're very kind. Ho molta esperienza nella pulizia. I have a lot of experience in cleaning," she said with a modest laugh. "I worked in hotels in Rome before coming to study here. It was a humiliating job, but it taught me to appreciate it when others go the extra mile for me." Another lie told with such sincerity that it almost seemed true. Ben returned from the call, apologizing profusely. "Sorry about that. Project crisis, but it's resolved now." He looked at the two of us cleaning together, and his face lit up. "Look at you two already acting like family." Bella stood gracefully, discarding the broken strainer. "Your mother is wonderful, love. So warm and welcoming. I feel so lucky." Every word was calculated. Every gesture was rehearsed. Every smile was a carefully constructed mask over a heart that saw my son as nothing more than a stepping stone to American citizenship and money. I managed to maintain my composure for the rest of the evening. We served coffee, talked about Italy, and listened to Bella tell carefully crafted stories about her life in Rome, the difficult childhood that made her appreciate Ben's stability, her dreams of building a life in America with the right partner. Each word was a piece in the manipulation puzzle she was putting together. But she made a crucial mistake that night, a mistake that would prove to be her undoing. Peace. As they were leaving, Bella noticed the family Bible on the side table in the living room, an antique leather-bound Bible that had belonged to my mother-in-law, passed down to me when she died 20 years ago. "What a beautiful Bible," she said, touching it reverently. "May I see it?" "Of course, dear." She opened it carefully, flipping through the yellowed pages. "There are notes here, handwritten in the margins." "Yes," I explained. "My mother-in-law, James's mother, was a very prayerful woman. She wrote down revelations God gave her during her vigils, prophecies for the family, spiritual warnings, things like that." Bella looked fascinated, but in a different way. Her eyes shone with something that wasn't spiritual reverence, but calculating curiosity. "How interesting," he murmured, reading through some notes. "Your mother-in-law seemed very, how do you say, spiritual." "She saw things others didn't see," I replied. "He had discernment. God showed him what was hidden." "She saw things others didn't see," I replied. "He had discernment. God showed him what was hidden." It was a subtle warning, a coded message between women, one saying, "I know who you really are," the other not yet realizing she'd been found out. Have you ever planted a seed of truth, knowing that it would grow in due time and destroy the entire plantation of lies? After Ben drove Bella home, I stood at the window watching the car disappear into the October darkness. My son was completely blind, in love with a woman who saw him as nothing more than a golden ticket to citizenship and money. The question was, what would I do with this information? I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I knelt beside the bed where James and I had prayed together for 45 years and did something I hadn't done since he died. I wept before God. "Lord," I pleaded, "protect my son from this trap. Show me what to do. And if this woman has come to destroy my family, may you destroy her plans first." That's when I remembered the Bible. I got up at 3 a.m, that hour the Bible calls the dawn watch, when the veil between the natural and the spiritual is thinnest, and took the old Bible from the living room. I sat at the kitchen table, under the yellow light of the lamp, and began leafing through my mother-in-law's notes. She had written prophecies, warnings, and revelations God had given her over 50 years of intercession for the Patterson family. And then I found it. In the margin of Proverbs 31, written in 1974, a year before I married James, was a note that chilled my blood. "The Lord has shown me, when Benjamin grows up and seeks a wife, one will come who will look like a sheep, but will be a wolf. Italian will be her language, deceit will be her heart, but the guardian of the family will have eyes to see and a tongue to understand. And on Christmas Eve, the Lord will bring justice." My hands trembled, holding that Bible. My mother-in-law had prophesied this 49 years ago, before Benjamin was born, before I even imagined I would have a son. And she had written, "The guardian of the family will have a tongue to understand." She knew. Somehow, God revealed to her that the future guardian of the family, me, would speak Italian. Because I spoke. For 5 years in my youth, I was a missionary in Rome with a Baptist organization. I worked in orphanages, learned fluent Italian, and only returned to the United States when I met James. It was a piece of my history I rarely mentioned, a part of my past that felt distant and irrelevant to my current life in Maplewood. Until that night, God had prepared everything 50 years before. He placed a prophetess in the family. He sent a young missionary to learn Italian. And now, at the exact moment, he revealed the trap before it was too late. When the sun rose over Maplewood that October morning, I was no longer just a 68-year-old grandma baking pies and attending Bible studies. I was a spiritual warrior with a divine mission to protect my son from a predator disguised as a lamb. But I knew I needed wisdom. Acting rashly could push Ben even further into Isabella's arms. He was in love. And any accusations I made without concrete evidence would only paint me as the jealous mother who couldn't accept another woman entering his life. So I prayed, and God gave me a strategy. First, I wouldn't tell Ben about the conversation I overheard. Not yet. Second, I would investigate who Isabella Rossi really was. Third, I would use the time until Christmas, which was only 2 months away, to gather evidence that did not be denied. Because the prophecy said, "On Christmas Eve, the Lord will bring justice." I started online. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Isabella's online presence was polished, but strangely superficial. Photos from the last 18 months. No deep history. No childhood friends or family tagged in old posts. Had you ever tried to research someone online and felt like you were looking at a pretty facade with nothing behind it? Her LinkedIn profile claimed she worked in hotel management in Rome, but the company names were vague. There were no professional connections or peer recommendations. For someone supposedly in her late 20s with an established career, her network was remarkably bare. It was then that I remembered something Isabella had casually mentioned over dinner. She was getting her master's degree at Vanderbilt. I called my niece Rachel, who works in the admissions office at the University of Tennessee. I wasn't asking for private information, just confirmation of something public. ... Aunt Dot, why do you want to know about master's programs in hotel management? Rachel asked curiously. Just helping Ben better understand his girlfriend's field of study. I lied smoothly. He's so in love, he barely understands what she does. Rachel laughed. Typical of Cousin Ben. It's always been more about numbers than people. Well, I can tell you that Vanderbilt has an excellent program, but it's extremely selective. Very few international students gain admission. And if I gave you a name, could you confirm that the person is registered? Just so I know I'm not being misled about who they say they are. There was a pause. Aunt Dot, this doesn't sound like you. What's going on? I sighed. Rachel, do you trust me? Always. Then trust that I have good reasons, and pray for your cousin. The next day, Rachel called me back. Her voice was different, worried. Aunt Dot, there is no Isabella Rossi enrolled in any master's program at Vanderbilt, nor has there ever been in the last 5 years. My stomach clenched. Are you sure? Absolutely. I triple-checked. Whoever this woman is, she's not a Vanderbilt student. The first lie was exposed, but I needed more. That's when I remembered what my mother-in-law always said. When God wants to reveal something, he puts the right people in the way. And he did just that. The following Sunday, after service at First Baptist Church, I was approached by a woman I didn't know well, Linda Morrison, wife of the new youth pastor who had moved to Maplewood 6 months earlier. Sister Dorothy, she said, touching my arm gently. May I speak with you in private? We went to the empty prayer room at the back of the church. I don't know how to say this without sounding like I'm gossiping, Linda began nervously. But the Holy Spirit has been nagging me to share something with you. Go ahead, my dear. God doesn't use gossip, but he does use testimony. Linda took a deep breath. My husband served as a military chaplain in Italy for 3 years before we returned to the United States. We have a lot of contact with the Christian community there, especially in Rome. My heart started racing. I heard your son is dating an Italian woman. Isabella Rossi, right? Try. Sister Dorothy, that name. I know that name. Or rather, my husband does. A few months ago, he received an email warning from a pastor in Rome about a woman who was scamming American Christian men, feigning conversion and interest in marriage. Linda took her cell phone out of her bag and showed me an email translated from Italian. Brothers in Christ in America, we are warning you about a woman named Isabella Rossi, approximately 28 to 30 years old, who has been infiltrating Christian communities to identify vulnerable targets, single men of good financial standing. She feigns conversion and shows interest in marriage, but her true goal is to obtain a green card and access to assets. She has already destroyed at least 3 families that we know of. Please protect your flocks. I felt like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. Are there any pictures? I managed to ask. Linda hesitated. Want to see? When she showed me the photo attached to the email, there was no doubt. It was the same woman who had eaten dinner at my house, who had helped me clean up spilled coffee, who had held my son's hands with feigned tenderness. Isabella Rossi wasn't just an opportunistic con artist. She was a professional predator who used her Christian faith as a tool of manipulation. Have you ever discovered that someone was using God's name to destroy lives? What should I do, Sister Linda? What you're already doing, protecting your family. But Sister Dorothy, you need professional help. This kind of scam is sophisticated. She probably has false documentation, rehearsed stories, even accomplices. Do you know anyone who can look into this legally? Linda nodded. My brother-in-law is a private investigator specializing in immigration fraud. He helps churches protect vulnerable members. If you'd like, I can connect you with him. Please. That afternoon, sitting in my living room with the curtains closed, I made a call that would change everything. Mrs. Patterson? My name is Marcus Webb. Linda Morrison told me about your situation. Marcus Webb didn't sound at all like what I expected from a private investigator. His voice was gentle, fatherly, more like a pastoral counselor than a detective. Mr. Webb, I need to know who this woman really is before she destroys my son. I completely understand, and I can help you, but you need to know that this type of investigation takes time. Usually 2 to 3 weeks to get a complete picture. We have until Christmas, I replied, thinking of the prophecy. Then we have 7 weeks, enough time. For the next 2 weeks, Marcus worked in silence. Meanwhile, I kept up appearances. Ben brought Isabella over for dinner every week, and I played the enchanted future mother-in-law, serving food, asking gentle questions, and secretly observing every detail that could be used against her. Isabella, for her part, continued her impeccable performance. She had started attending Baptist church with Ben, sat next to me during services, and even volunteered to help with the annual Christmas charity bazaar we held. "Dot," she said one Sunday after church, holding my hand with mock tenderness. "I feel like I've finally found a real family. In Rome, I always felt alone. But here I feel God's love through you." All lies. Every word calculated to build trust and lower defenses. But I was building my own trap, brick by brick, prayer by prayer. It was in the 3rd week of November that Marcus called me. "Mrs. Patterson, you need to sit down and hear what I've discovered." What he revealed was worse than I imagined. Marcus Webb arrived at my house on a gray November afternoon, carrying a thick briefcase and the grim expression of someone who had discovered something terrible. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where my mother-in-law used to pray for hours, the same one where I had read the prophecy in the ancient Bible. "Mrs. Patterson," Marcus began, opening the folder, "Isabella Rossi is not who she says she is. In fact, I don't even know if that's her real name." He spread photographs on the table. They were pictures of, yes, in 2 previous cases, she brought parents from Italy to meet the families. They were hired actors, trained to represent the traditional Italian family that validated the whole charade. I thought of Ben talking excitedly about meeting Isabella's parents, who were coming to visit before Christmas. "Marcus," he said slowly, "Ben mentioned that her parents are coming in 2 weeks, for Thanksgiving." He nodded grimly. Probably another piece of the operation. Family approval, parental blessing, all to psychologically pressure a quick marriage. "What about her visa? How is she here legally?" "Student visa, but the university listed on the documents has no record of it. It's a high-quality forgery." Marcus closed the folder and looked at me directly. "Miss Patterson, this woman is a career criminal. What she did is not only immoral, it's a federal crime. Immigration fraud, document forgery, and possibly money laundering. What should I do?" 2 options. 1. Go straight to Ben with the evidence and pray he believes it. Risk. He might think you faked it out of jealousy and marry her out of defiance. And the second one? Let her expose herself. Create a situation where she can't deny who she really is. But that requires patience and nerves of steel. I looked at the ancient Bible still open on the table, at the prophecy written almost 50 years ago. On Christmas Eve, the Lord will bring justice. I have nerves of steel tempered by 50 years of prayer, I replied, and I have a prophecy that tells me when this is to happen. Marcus looked at me with renewed respect. Then we'll plan carefully. But Mrs. Patterson, you need to be prepared for what this will do to Ben. When the truth comes out, he will be devastated. I'd rather see it devastated now than destroyed for years. Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone from immediate pain or saving them from greater destruction in the future? 2 weeks later, on Thanksgiving Thursday, my house was ready to welcome not only Ben and Isabella, but also her parents, who had flown in from Italy. I had been cooking for 2 days. Roast turkey, cornbread stuffing, mashed potatoes, homemade cranberry sauce, pumpkin pie, and pecan pie. The table was set with the family china, the candles lit, and the prophetic Bible strategically placed on the living room sideboard. Marcus had given me specific instructions. Act naturally, observe everything, and when you get the chance, speak Italian to them. See how they react. At 5 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. Ben entered first, beaming, followed by Isabella, who looked even more elegant than usual, and a middle-aged couple who could easily have stepped out of a traditional Italian family catalog. "Signora Patterson," the man said, taking my hand and kissing it lightly. "I am Giovanni Rossi, and this is my wife Francesca. It is an honor to meet the mother of the man who captured our Isabella's heart." His accent was perfect. His mannerisms were exactly what you'd expect. He even smelled of expensive Italian cologne. Francesca hugged me warmly, speaking in rapid Italian about how happy she was to meet me, how wonderful Ben was, how beautiful our house was. They were good, professionally good. During dinner, I kept up my charming mother-in-law act. I asked questions about Italy, Rome, and their life in Marseille, where Isabella had said they lived. And that's when the slip-ups began. Giovanni talked about his work as a retired teacher, but the details were too vague. Francesca described her work at the municipality, but the information contradicted itself within the... And most revealing, when they spoke to each other in Italian, thinking I didn't understand, their casual conversations revealed knowledge and references that belonged to Naples, not Rome or Marseille. "Pass the salt, please. Passe o sal, por favor," said Francesca to Giovanni in Italian. "This American food is so bland. Esta comida americana è tan sin grasa. At least the wine is decent," Giovanni replied, also in Italian. "I also miss real Neapolitan cheese." At least the wine is decent. Although I miss real Neapolitan cheese. Neapolitan, not Roman, not Marseille. Meanwhile, in English, they praised my food and expressed genuine pleasure at American hospitality. It was after dessert, when Ben went to help get coffee in the kitchen, that Isabella made her fatal mistake. She spoke softly to her parents in rapid Italian, thinking I was far enough away. Tutto sta a andar perfettamente. La vecchia è completa ingenua. Dopo il fidanzamento la prossima settimana, matrimonio a Capodanno. Everything is going perfectly. The old woman is completely naive. After the engagement next week, wedding on New Year's Day. And when will Benjamin discover the truth? And when will Benjamin descubrir a verdade? Perguntò Giovanni. Non lo scoprirà mai. A quel punto sarò già cittadina americana con la mia parte dei soldi. He will never find out. At that point, I will already be an American citizen with my share of the money. I stood at the entrance to the room, hidden by the shadows, holding the prophetic Bible in my hands. It was then that I decided. It was time. I walked calmly into the room, the Bible open to the page, with my mother-in-law's prophecy. Isabella, I said in perfect Italian. I'd like to read something to you. The silence that followed was absolute. Isabella's face went white. Giovanni and Francesca looked at each other with barely concealed panic. Ben stood in the kitchen doorway, completely confused. Mom, do you speak Italian? Fluently, I replied, still in Italian. I spent 5 years as a missionary in Rome. I learned the language, the culture, and most importantly, I learned to spot wolves in sheep's clothing. Isabella tried to laugh. Dot, I don't understand what's going on. Of course you understand, Sophia. Or would you prefer I call you by one of your other names? Lucia? Maria? How many identities have you used to destroy Christian families? That's when everything fell apart. What followed that Thanksgiving night was painful, but necessary. With Marcus Webb already on his way with federal agents, Isabella and her parents tried to keep up the charade for a few more minutes before realizing it was all over. Ben was in shock, wavering between denying the truth and facing the devastation of having been completely deceived. Mom, he whispered, eyes filling with tears, did you know how long it had been? Since the first night she came here. I heard her on the phone planning how to manipulate you. And you didn't tell me? The pain in his voice cut through my heart. Would you have believed me? Or would you have thought I was jealous? He didn't answer because he knew the truth. He wouldn't have believed it. Isabella was arrested that night for immigration fraud. Giovanni and Francesca, real names Tony and Angela, Miami actors hired to play Italian parents, were detained as accomplices. But the story didn't end there, because the prophecy said, on Christmas Eve, the Lord will bring justice. And that's exactly what happened. On Christmas Eve, 2 months after Isabella's arrest, I received an unexpected call. She was a young woman with a genuine Italian accent. Signora Patterson, my name is Chiara Benedetti. I'm from Italy. I heard about Isabella Rossi's arrest from the Italian police investigating her network. And, well, I think I need to meet your son. Chiara explained that she was the cousin of one of Isabella's previous victims. When she learned of the arrest, she decided to come to the United States to Chiara arrived in Maplewood 3 days later. She was everything Isabella pretended to be. Genuinely sweet, truly devout Catholic, honestly interested in building a life based on faith and family. And Ben? He was hesitant at first, too hurt to trust easily. But there was something different about Chiara. She didn't try to impress him. She didn't have rehearsed stories. She was simply herself, imperfections, vulnerabilities, and all. On Christmas morning, as we prepared breakfast together, Chiara picked up the prophetic Bible on the sideboard. Can I see? He asked. I showed her the prophecy my mother-in-law had written in 1974. Chiara read in silence, tears streaming down her face. When she finished, she looked at me with reverence. Signora Patterson, do you know what my nana, my grandmother, told me before I came here? What, honey? She said, Chiara, God is sending you to America not only to testify against evil, but to find the family he has prepared for you. And she gave me this. Chiara took a small prayer book from her purse. She opened it to a marked page and showed me a handwritten note in Italian dated 1975. I read it, and my heart almost stopped. It was a prophecy written by Chiara's grandmother, almost identical to my mother-in-law's, telling how her granddaughter would one day marry an American man of great faith, whose family would be protected by a prayerful, Italian-speaking woman. Two grandmothers, two continents, two prophecies written 1 year apart, a plan of God woven over 50 years. Ben and Chiara were married a year later in a simple but beautiful ceremony at our Baptist church, with a Catholic priest co-officiating, a perfect symbol of the union of two faith traditions. And Isabella? She was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison and permanent deportation. The criminal network was dismantled. 7 families she had destroyed received restitution. Today, 2 years later, I am the grandmother of twins, Giovanni James and Francesca May. Names we have transformed from symbols of deception into testimonies of redemption. Because God didn't just expose evil, He turned it into a blessing. This morning, as I write this story, in my kitchen in Maplewood, the prophetic Bible lies open before me, and there's a new note in the margins, written by me, following in the tradition of the Patterson family's praying women. For future generations, when the enemy plants weeds in the family field, God will have already prepared the guardians. Never underestimate a praying grandmother who knows tongues, keeps prophecies, and serves a God who sees 50 years into the future. If this story touched you, leave a comment. Subscribe for more testimonies about how God protects families through generations of intercessors. Because every prayer is a seed, every prophecy a promise, and every grandmother of faith an army of one. Until next time, may the Lord protect your family as He protected mine.